You'll raise your hand, someone will either come pick them up, or you can walk them up yourself. Now, let's just do a little quick background on Salt Lake City, and I think those of you who've known me for several years know I'm a numbers guy. So let's talk a little bit about Salt Lake City and what it is and what it isn't. Salt Lake City's population is currently about 191,000 people, 6% of the state. Daytime, its population increases 80%. So of the cities of first class nationwide, Salt Lake City ranks #1 in the expansion during the daylight working hours. So during that period, Salt Lake's population was up to 344,000, or 11% of the state. State's got about just shy of 3 million people now. Sales. Salt Lake City is a commercial center for the state and frankly for this entire multi-state region. Salt Lake City has about $7 billion a year in taxable retail sales. So even though they're 6% of the state, they represent 16% of the state's taxable retail sales. That's the good news. The bad news is while the state sales went up 5.2% last year, Salt Lake's only went up 3.5%. The big three. Wholesale durable goods is #1 at 11%. Food services and drinking places, 10%. Retail, motor vehicles, parts and dealers, 9%. Now, to put the $7 billion in perspective, that's the next three: Sandy, West Valley City, and Orem combined. So Salt Lake is just that much bigger than the next three combined. Now, general fund budget for the city. This does not include redevelopment, doesn't include all the other budgets, just their general fund. $230 million, up 21% over last year. 70% of that comes from taxes. Property taxes, 45% of that. Sales taxes, 35%. And what they're still calling franchise taxes, but is really a utility tax. Taxes you pay like your telephone service, electrical service, and natural gas, 18%. The set #2 is charges for services. These are building permits and plant checks and other kind of things. Licenses and permits at 9, fines and forfeitures down at 4. Expenses. General government, which includes the mayor's office, the legislature, other things, 23%. Public safety, we just voted to have the chief of police in. 43% of the city's budget is public safety. Highways, public improvements, 9. Parks and rec, public property, 7. Community and economic development, 2%. Now, let's get into the substance. We've got 2 volunteers down here in front. Peter and Glenn, will you hold your little signs up? We're going to allow each candidate 3 minutes for introduction and opening remarks. We'll flip a coin to see who goes first. I hope I did right. Okay. Just make it simple. That's Ralph, Dale, Jackie. Is that go? Sure. Okay. So just who goes first and then last, we'll rotate. And that included whoever goes first goes last. Whoever goes first at the introduction, then goes last at the end. Okay? So, if it's heads, you go first. If it's tails, Jackie, okay, you'll go first on the introductions. Okay? We'll then go to questions and answers. Written from the audience, and they'll have 90 seconds each, okay? And then if a rebuttal is necessary, you can do 30 seconds off of that. We'll have a 2-minute concluding remark, so Ralph, you'll go first on those, and then we'll adjourn promptly at 1:30. Any questions anybody has? I'm going to go with the first question that was slipped up to me early.
So we're doing our own little introduction.
I'm sorry.
Are we doing our own introduction?
Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's right. So, some people can't see. Do you want me to stand while I speak or just stay standing?
Why don't you want to come up here and do the introduction up here?
Thank you. I'm Jackie Biscupski. And for those of you who don't know me, I'll give you a little bit about my background. I served in the Utah legislature for 13 years. And during that time, I served on the International Trade Commission, the Economic Development Appropriations Committee, the Business Labor Standing Committee, the Healthcare Reform Task Force, the Rules Committee. Very heavy business background for me. I've been a small business owner. I've also worked for corporate America. And part of the reason I decided to run had a lot to do with the businesses in our city and what I saw to be a real strong need for a partnership and an advocacy coming from our administration, especially for small businesses. What else I've been spending my time doing is helping the sheriff. I've been working for the sheriff now for 8 years. I'm a senior policy advisor for him and a project manager. What that means is it has been a very strong team effort to make change in very significant ways on how the sheriff's office has been operating. The sheriff and I, along with several mayors and community leaders, developed the Unified Police Department in the first years that the sheriff and I came in to do the work that he was elected to do. Also, under that team of leadership, I was the head of a project that created a communication bridge between VEC and the sheriff's office. There was a disparate system going on and communications were not efficient or effective. And we changed that with this communication bridge, and it took a lot of collaborating and a lot of effort on my part as a project manager. One of the other projects I took on was I found in our community in Kearns, we had a ball field that had been abandoned. We took on that ball field, and instead of going after the crime that was going on there, we decided to go after changing the purpose of the field and making it usable again in that community. That ball field is now a multi-purpose use field. It is being operated by the county. The land was donated by the owners of the property to the county in perpetuity as long as it stayed as a recreational field. We decreased crime in that area by 50% within a mile of the field. A very out-of-the-box thinking way of doing things, but an important tool as we move forward and some of the things that we will see need to be changed, especially what's happening down in our Pioneer Park area. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here. It's so good to see so many old friends. Some of them are back to my first days. Came to Utah over 40 years ago, and people who I've worked with and in different capacities in this community for many, many years. I've had the great pleasure of serving in this position for 8 years, and we've seen incredible changes in Salt Lake City during that time. But first, let me commend you. The Rotary Club, in my association and experience with you, is the exemplar. It's just exemplary in terms of what you do in public service, what you do in community service. The work that I've done with you in Memory Grove, up City Creek Canyon, Rotary Glen, and the improvements you've made there have manifest themselves, obviously, in our community. The work you do in education, the work you've done around the world. Particularly around diseases and healthcare, have just been magnificent. That approach to public service, to serving our community, is what I've brought to my career in public service, which includes 11 years in the legislature, most of that time in leadership in the legislature, and over 20 years with my own business, and now 8 years as mayor. When I came into office 8 years ago, this city and this community, as the whole nation, was facing the worst economic crisis it was facing since the Depression And we didn't know if we were gonna end up in a depression. All I did for my first 6 years was figure out how to cut budgets without raising taxes, which was successful. How to streamline city government, and how to keep this city moving forward. Emerging from the recession, Salt Lake City today is the most prosperous city in the country. We're #1 in job creation. People are flocking to our city with their businesses, and we have reached populations that exceed any time in our past. And for those of you who don't know, in 1960, as I'm sure Bob will attest to, our population was 180,000. By 1980, our population was 150,000. So we've been in this amazing time. And my desire in continuing to serve with and represent this city and collaborate with our private sector, the communities around us, with the state and federal agencies, is to make sure that we continue to build on that momentum. And we do it in our economy, in terms of prosperity. We do it in protecting our neighborhoods. We do it in improving our air quality. And we do it around a whole series of initiatives that make Salt Lake City also rated as the most livable city in the country. But we have much to do. I look at Tim Brown and the work we're doing around connecting kids with nature and how that can help get kids from behind their screens and into the great outdoors. I look at Jeff Hatch and the work that we do around trying to streamline and make more efficient government, which we've really succeeded in Salt Lake. And I want to carry that forward with the plans that you can find on my website. As in every election, I'm using this as an opportunity to lay out not just what I have done and the achievements in this city, but I plan for going forward so we can continue to be and really emerge and be known as a great American city. Thank you.
Got several questions here on street homelessness. One deals with the fact that you got a 7 or 8 year wait for Section 8 housing vouchers. Another one talks about the expenses that local businesses incur because of the homeless issue. So maybe let's just start with Jackie, go back over. How would you work with or change Salt Lake City's approach to street homeless? You can if you can answer here at the table, then you don't have to go down.
Sure, that's fine. So what's happening is we have several providers who are trying to accommodate the needs of our homeless population. But we're finding that we're hitting barriers to success here. And I think in a situation like this where there are multiple entities, including government and community service providers, it takes a real outside of the box thinking opportunity. We need to be sitting down and looking at this in a very different way than we have in the past. And what we know with certainty is that not only just sheltering, but creating the housing opportunities to help people transition back to being independent and on their own again is critical if we are ever going to keep the population from cycling over and over into homelessness. We have to pay close attention to the needs of the people who are coming to our shelters to begin with. Why are they there? Doing an assessment and then helping them move into transitional housing, employment, and then low-income housing and independence. But we have to make sure that we're following up and spending at least 2 years making sure and tracking what is happening with these individuals, making sure they're on track to independence and staying there, but then not falling back into homeless due to mental illness or addiction or some of the other issues that create homelessness to begin with.
You're better.
I'm going to stand out so that I can see folks on both sides of the room, so apologize for that. But homelessness is obviously a persistent and I will say perplexing and one of the most challenging problems we face as a city. From the time I've been in office, I've been meeting with homeless providers quarterly. We have looked at how those services are provided, looked at our facilities, and looked at impacts in the community. It's a shame our homeless friends don't have shelter. It's a shame when they don't have support, and it's a shame when we see criminals embed themselves in the homeless population to do their drug dealing and perform their nefarious acts. Really, we can divide addressing homelessness in two ways. One is the current conditions. And we have seen, despite persistent efforts, the conditions worsen until just recently. With the new police chief, Chief Brown, with working more broadly with our region, with others up and down the system, we're seeing measurable progress with the businesses, with the residents, with those who visit the depot area where our homeless shelter and facilities are. The second, which is equally important, is to look at how do we address homelessness long-term. And after years of struggling with this and seeing splintering in the community with different approaches, Mayor McAdams at the county and I at the city came together in parallel efforts with the city developing facilities, the county looking at services, and we at the end of this year will have an integrated approach for how we can improve not only the lives of our homeless friends, but also how as a result, we also address the impacts on the community. For the first time I can tell you since I've been in office, I feel like we have turned the corner and have a great approach in front of us.
There's 30 seconds.
Are there any rebuttal comments?
No.
Interesting question. Let's go with you now. Rob, what U.S. city, other than Salt Lake, do you think is doing it right, and why?
Well, one of the things I've had the great joy as part of this job is to be meeting with regularly, evaluating all the cities across the country, and looking at what practices, what initiatives, what efforts are going in other communities that are making those cities better. And so I would not pick one city. I call where I have been and where we are in Salt Lake City in a healthy competition with cities all across the country. We steal each other's ideas. Of course, we don't call it stealing. Once we give attribution once, it's our idea. And we bring them to make our cities better. And unlike all other levels of government, cities are where the action is. Cities is where there's innovation and creativity, and where we are working collaboratively with our community, not the polarized work you see or non-work you see at the federal level, it's too often at the state level, to advance our communities. So I could point on different topics to 20 different cities where I have picked up ideas and brought them back to this city, and we've explored how best to make our city better. So that goes with everything from how do we reduce our carbon footprint and improve our air quality by reducing our energy use and improving mobility and reducing air pollution. How do we create great recreational opportunities? How do we address homelessness, where, believe it or not, Salt Lake City is held up as the example around the country? How do we improve our prosperity and our business environment so that the quality of life here, protecting our neighborhoods, remains great? Anyway, it's really been great to learn from other communities, bring those ideas home, and share our ideas with others.
I would agree with the mayor that there isn't a city that does it better than we do. We are a very unique community. Every city is its own unique place. But one of the things about Utah and Salt Lake City in particular is that we know how to come together. It's the work you're doing, and it's the work the city does. It's the work going on through our universities. We have 5 institutions of higher education here. But we have an obligation, I think, to the people who live here to make sure we are partnering. We don't partner very well with our institutions of higher learning. I don't know what our partnership looks like with you, but there is no doubt you're the eyes and ears of the people that live here. And we should have direct communication going on and partnering with you, with your mentoring program. What you are doing in Franklin is exactly part of what I want to bring into this city for other schools, to make sure kids all have the same opportunity to be successful. If they don't, they end up in the jail that I work for. And we don't want that. That's not the direction we want our children heading. So without a doubt, stronger collaboration with our businesses, being partners to them, working closer with GoEd, which we are not doing, to draw down incentive funds, to make sure that companies that are coming here or could come could come here want to be in Salt Lake City and not Sandy or Draper or down in Utah County. We've missed opportunities, and I think partnering is key to making sure that we take advantage of all the opportunities we have for our city. Thank you.
Any follow-up comments?
So I certainly agree with Jackie that collaboration, partnerships is the way we best get things done. There has not been one major initiative that I've been involved in Salt Lake City where partnerships across the board, private and public, different levels of government, nonprofit and profit, have not been at the core. The Capital City Education Program is a great example. The first time a mayor has taken on education issues, and we have partnered through a Capital City Education Plan that is bringing the entire community, private, university, Salt Lake City, nonprofit organizations, each playing our role to help support our kids so they can be successful.
Jackie?
Just a real quick statistic that you should all know, 80% of our minority children in this city are coming into contact with law enforcement before the age of 18. That means the Capital City program is not doing the work it should be doing, and that's making sure every student is being directed towards success and not failure and heading into our criminal justice system. So we have work to do. And I think that's important for all of us to remember, because at the end of the day, we pay for those children, whether they are successful or they're heading into our jails. And I think we'd rather make sure they're heading towards success.
Thank you. A number of questions about promoting businesses, business growth, attracting businesses, tourism. Let me just kind of consolidate them all, and let's go to you first, Jackie. What is your economic development plan, and how does it differ from your opponents?
So my economic development plan requires us to look more closely at making sure that when we are operating as a city, that we are doing the best possible job we can to be your advocate and your partner if you are a business owner. Our planning and zoning department is bogged down with conflicts, with paperwork that is repetitive. We're finding that in a process that shouldn't take extremely long periods of time, months on end, whether it's a small addition to your home or whether you're trying to get a business off the ground, it is very difficult. And we have companies that are leaving our city or choose not to come here because they can't navigate our system. We absolutely must streamline. I've done streamlining for the sheriff. I spent a whole year working with our teams, going through our processes, making sure we streamlined. We cut our budget by $14 million by streamlining processes just in the sheriff's office. We need to do the same in our planning and zoning department if we are going to be successful in helping our businesses. We also absolutely must partner better and more often with EDC Utah and GoEd. We're missing real opportunities there. And we need to look at our impact fees. Our impact fees do not relate to the real impacts that a business brings into our city. And we are charging people for employing. There is a fee. If you hire a new employee, we charge you a fee for that. It is not serving the business community well, and is not serving the people who live here well.
So building on this incredible success we've had in the last several years, where Salt Lake City is ranked #1 in virtually every economic category for cities around the country. We have much to do. But let me put some things in perspective. When I came into office, our permitting system, or our community development function, was struggling enormously. Our permitting time now in Salt Lake City has been cut in half. We have folks who can submit everything online. They can get their approvals without ever coming into the office. And we're seeing incredible success with that for both the development community and for our community that wants to follow through an interactive website for the community to follow. Google Fiber is coming to Salt Lake City because of the incredible economy we have here, because they could see we could work with developers who want to come into the city and move quickly around development that will greatly enhance our community. So whether we look at it in terms of attracting new businesses, where we already have, by the way, a partnership, we provide a lot of money to the Economic Development Corporation of Utah to attract our businesses or otherwise, we have had great success. Now, we shouldn't rest on our laurels. SLC Enterprise, which was more than a year in the making, it was done independently and evaluated us talking with businesses and looking at our organization and our efforts, recommended a whole series of things that we are already implementing to deal with things like impact fees, to address a culture of making sure that we're always trying to find solutions for development, and to set up a separate process apart from ECDU to make sure we're focusing on Salt Lake City for attracting businesses to our community.
Yes, just real quick. Salt Lake City Enterprise has many things in it that I launched my campaign with. There are things that I was very much aware of that our city needs. And so if you go to my website and you look at the launch of my campaign, you will see several things that have been identified early on by me. There is no doubt we can do better, and that focusing on this economy is key to our success and to the success of the people who live here. And I am very committed to making sure that our community has employment opportunities that we have missed out on. Thank you.
Mayor Becker, to lead on this one. 8 years ago, when you first ran, you ran as blueprint man. Yeah, Salt Lake City does not have a comprehensive overall master plan, but it has 9 different community plans, some dating back to 1986 when Palmer DePaulis was mayor. Does Salt Lake City need a comprehensive master plan? And if so, what are your plans to create one?
I can tell you, as a planner and former planning commissioner for 7 years in Salt Lake City, there's nothing more dear to my heart than plans. Salt Lake City has had a long history of focusing on both different areas of the city for its plans, different neighborhoods, including like the downtown as a specialized plan, or West Side communities, and on, or transportation in other areas. And we have been very successful in those targeted areas. We actually do now have a comprehensive plan. It's called SLC Plan. We spent years out engaging with the community, getting ideas, focusing on what's most important. And it is providing now the umbrella that's being called for here for all of our planning work to get the major themes and direction and priorities for Salt Lake City as we move forward. We've also started, since I've been in office, updating plans that were long overdue to be updated. One of the best ones we have is the West Side Plan, which spent months reaching out into the neighborhood in every way and is providing a great direction, both in terms of objectives and goals for our community and the west side of our community, and then specific actions to take place. And the City Council and I, since we've adopted that plan, are piece by piece now going through and implementing the pieces of that. So we're actually, I think, in a great place in terms of planning. We need to continue those efforts. I'm a real believer in planning that can really provide the guidance and keep us moving forward.
So the SLC plan is really important. I think we need to work from that plan, but we also need to make sure that as we are moving forward as a community, that we are getting input from the public. And what I've heard from people all over the city, especially the west side, is that they are not being heard, that their voice and their opinion simply does not matter. And it is driving a desire for change in our city, especially on issues that are really contentious. You know, the expansion of the S-Line and Sugar House. The community council voted to continue to move forward with the mayor, but the people in Sugar House are opposed to the expansion. Part of that is because we are not operating from a master transit plan. We absolutely need one. We should not continue to invest millions and millions of dollars in development when we aren't operating from a transit plan, especially one that the people had some say in. And that is something I will bring to the table. We will create that, and it will include bikes, it will include cars, it will include trains and buses and pedestrians. All of that matters, and people in this community desperately need transit system in place that serves their needs and helps them get basically just to and from work. And we don't have that today. And I want to make sure we bring that. And I'm looking at bringing in our own bus system. I would love to hear from you about that after we meet today.
Just quickly, in terms of transportation and the transit plan, Salt Lake City has a transportation plan that's current. We also adopted a bike and pedestrian plan, so focusing on those modes of how we get around a couple of years ago. And last year, with the city council, we decided we really need our own transit plan, not just the work that UTA does. And it will give us great opportunities. The Sugar House streetcar line came because when I was running for office, I said, let's bring streetcar back to Salt Lake City. We had over 140 miles of streetcar. Many of you don't remember that. I don't. But we lost it. And we were able to obtain a federal grant unexpectedly that advanced our opportunity to develop streetcar in Sugar House. It has produced in the first year and a half over $400 million of investment in the core of Sugar House. So it's been a great success. We need to continue working with it and with the community.
While we're on transportation, we'll go back to Jackie to lead. Air pollution is a major concern, and it's an issue that affects all of us. How will you address this problem? And since transportation is probably the only issue that Salt Lake City deals with that really impacts pollution, we'll make that the continuum.
Sure, it's a major factor. And what we know today is that UTA is a regional service. And they are doing what they can with the funds that they have for this to spend on our city. But it's not enough. We have neighborhoods in our city that don't even have bus service today. And they want it. And I've been hearing that all through this entire campaign. Get us the bus service we need. And that doesn't mean just getting buses in. It also means the hours of operation. It also means making sure there are shelters available in the winter so that people can actually utilize those services. I am very dedicated to bringing what you see today in Park City or what you are seeing in other parts of the country where we have a local transit system in place that works in tandem with UTA, and we collaborate creating a bus system, a pass system that allows you to go from our local system and onto a UTA system. And I think that will be very helpful in getting the cars off the streets and also making it much easier for people in Salt Lake City to get around once they are here. And that will drive more utilization of the transit lines that come into our city.
As Bob noted in his introduction, Salt Lake City represents 1/10 of the population of our airshed, of our region, and even a smaller part of our geography. But we have a critical role to play in improving air quality. My background as an environmental planner and lawyer was centered around environmental matters, and my master's project was actually on the Clean Air Act. And there are things actually we can do, not just with transportation, but across the board, and it depends a little bit on the pollutants. So in our wintertime inversions, particularate pollutants, the leading cause is from vehicular use, 57% of the pollution. So we obviously need to be able to provide for other ways for people to get around. And that means better transit service. That means making our neighborhoods more walkable so people don't have to drive as much. And it means adding bikes to our whole system, whether it's bike share or bike lanes, so people can more easily get around using other uses. But our buildings are also incredibly important. And Salt Lake City is particularly known for the work we've done for reducing the emissions from our buildings. We, for example, developed the first net zero public safety building and the largest net zero building in the country. Now, buildings are our largest source of carbon emissions. So if we're going to address carbon emissions, we have to do it with our buildings. It means more energy efficiency, it means moving more to renewables. We've developed a solar farm. We've got Project Skyline working with our downtown commercial properties where all these natural resources have come in looking at what we can do in Salt Lake City to help us. We're making great progress as a city, but we have to also work with the entire region and with the state.
I've lost track. Who's next up? Salt Lake City has an enviable history of service and financial support from a number of churches and charitable organizations. In your past public service, what have you done or what will you do with such churches and charities, and how will you draw upon their resources to build our city and help with the less fortunate?
So I mentioned earlier that for me, and I think the way I look at doing things with our community is we've got to work collaboratively, we've got to build partnerships, we all have to bring our own special abilities and skills to the table. And the faith community and the churches and the nonprofit organizations in this community are incredibly generous. Throughout my time in public service, not just as mayor, I've always worked with those partnerships. We see it around the homeless population, where the private funding plays a huge role for us. We spend today $50 million a year in government money just for providing for our homeless services. You can double that when you add emergency response time needs and when you look at our private sector investments. So everything that I do, and you see this with our homeless facilities group that's together, it's the churches and the groups, it's the nonprofits, it's the providers, it's the businesses, it's all the governmental entities up and down the system that come together to figure out what is the best approach and how do we most effectively and efficiently use our resources. So we can also look at the new theater growing downtown. 25% of that money is coming from generous patrons in the private sector. So having these partnerships is always the key to success. And working with different organizations, whether it's the LDS Church, which has made a huge role with us, not just with City Creek Center, but also with the new theater, or with the homeless population, or whether it's the nonprofit organizations that give so much of your time, including, of course, the Rotary. That's how we are successful as a community, and we're known around the country for that collaboration.
There are some very specific things that I can point to about what I believe is very helpful to all of us. There is a ton of money, as the mayor just said, that we are spending just as a government agency on the homeless issue. As a fiscally conservative leader in this community, I think we have a real due diligence that needs to be done on those dollars. I think we need to audit that a bit before we keep reaching out to the community and asking for more money. I think we have an obligation to you as people who are being supporters of government and our services to make sure that we are very fiscally sound. The other thing is I've been working heavily with the refugee population and the local community religions that are involved in that. And we created several education pieces for refugees when they come in, so they understand our laws here and can stay out of trouble and not end up in our jail simply because they are not aware. Those collaborative efforts have been very successful, and our program is expanding. The other piece to this is I've met with the presiding bishopric to talk about our local economy, the direction the LDS Church is going, and what their priorities are over the coming years. And that meeting, I think it was extremely helpful to me as somebody who wants to come in and serve. I have a very good understanding of where things are at today and how we can move forward together, and I'm looking forward to that working relationship.
Okay. We're starting running right close on time, so I'm going to slip in one little short question, and it's to Mayor Becker, and it's, do you still iron your own shirts?
Doug revealed that about me a number of years ago when I was meeting with all of you, and I am still ironing my shirts, usually 10 to 15 at a time. It's the way I feel I can justify watching a ball game.
Any response?
Well, I can tell you my 5-year-old is not ironing for me, so I am doing the ironing as well.
Okay, let's do then the short wrap up. So you went first on the introduction. Rob, you go first on the wrap up. 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you again for having us. This election really is, at this point, a choice between 2 candidates. And for all of you and for folks who live in Salt Lake City who will be voting is a question of who can best lead this city forward. Who has the leadership skills and ability, experience? Who has the vision for this city going forward that will carry us forward in a way that enables us to continue to be a wonderful city, but also to be a truly great city. And we've been going through remarkable times that bring change, that make people anxious. And growth brings its own challenges. As a planner, I work with communities literally all over the country and sometimes around the world on how do you address growth to preserve your quality of life. It also means that we need to understand the changes around our demographics, the changes around our environment. How do we protect our water quality and watersheds? How do we address the fact that we have over 100 languages spoken in our schools, and some kids come to school unprepared and so start behind the 8 ball? My objective going forward is to build on this foundation of success we've had for the last 8 years and to really elevate us to a whole nother level. And whether it's around livability and sustainability, whether it's around improving opportunities for kids, whether it's around protecting these mountain resources that so define us and enable us to have unparalleled opportunities, or whether it's our transportation and circulation system or protecting our neighborhoods. I live every day to work for the best interest of this city, and I hope I can earn your support as we move forward for the next 4 years.
Candidate Biscupski.
Thank you, and thank you again for being here and for allowing us to take some time to visit with you. There is no doubt we have some very difficult issues to address. Our criminal activity going on with drug dealing in our city, our very aggressive panhandling, the homeless population, and the numbers that we are seeing today that we have never seen before. We have transit issues. The west side of our city truly needs economic development, and with that will come a much more prosperous community for everyone. We have to look at developing the portals into the city. That means North Temple and the rest of State Street. We have no RDA projects that go beyond 5th South. And State Street is a street that is heavily used to get into our city, and yet we still have hookers on State Street right below Simgill's window. We can do better than that, and we need to do better than that. I have a real moral obligation to also make sure that every student in this community has the ability to be successful. We have nearly $400 million in unfunded infrastructure needs in this city. And if we don't do better in economic development, we will never catch up. The council passed a tax increase in 2013, and the current administration spent half of that on salaries. That's not how we catch up on infrastructure. That money was fully intended for infrastructure, and half of it went to salaries. That's not how we should be doing things. We need to be very fiscally conservative and mindful to make sure that we don't see deficits like we're seeing today in our infrastructure needs. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, both candidates. Thanks to all of you for your thoughtful and insightful questions, and special thanks to Peter and Glenn for the timing. Well done.